So there's definitely this darker side of power. And I think we need to start looking at that and see how that stops us from actually reclaiming our true power. And that is the ability to act or produce an effect. It is having influence and authority. And we've started to forget that all of us have influence. Every single one of us has an influence. We all have people in our lives that we affect their lives. And we can either have a positive influence on their life, or we can be part of the negative influence in someone's life. So it's really about knowing that reclaiming your power is actually reclaiming knowing that you actually have an impact.
Welcome to the Wildflower Diaries Show, where we have meaningful conversations and contemplations to bring you back to life. I'm Beth, your host and guide, to help you along your healing journey and to really start living life fully. We have forgotten that we are the builders, creators, weavers, lovers, visionaries and dreamers. Through these discussions, learn and implement practices to remember and reconnect to all of who you are. Your body, intuition, power, heart, voice, mind and magic are ready to be reclaimed so that you can make ripple effects of change that you know deep down you are made for. Let's get started with this week's episode.
Hope everyone is keeping well and getting ready for the end of the year. A lot of people are about to go on holiday. And looking forward to speaking to you today. This will probably be the last show for this year, and we will look to take it up again next year. I'm about to move to Cape Town, so there's a lot of exciting things happening on my side. So need to get concentrating on doing that. Welcome to episode 8 of the Wildflower Diaries Show. And today we're going to be speaking about reclaiming your true power. And the reason I want to say true power is because of the amount of distortions and things out there about power that can stop us from actually looking to reclaim our power. So like I like to do, I wanted to firstly look at what is the definition of the word power, because all of us will have our own idea of what power means. But the actual definition is the ability to act or produce an effect. So that is the ability to act. And then the other one that came up when I was looking at it was possession of control, authority, or influence over others. Okay. So some various different things that can make us be a little bit funny then about control about power. So the way I feel that power has been distorted is there is this dark side of power. There is this side of power that people have this unconscious bias about that has made a lot of people feel like, I don't want any power, or to feel that we don't have any power. Okay, so there's been a lot of things that have been said about power that makes us really almost step away from it. So one of the things about the power that we see in the world, it's often power over. So this people having control, someone unseen having control over us, this powers that be, there's a lot of this talk about who's controlling the world, who's controlling us. And I think often that is the concept we have of power, is this controlling other people. And that is not the type of power we want to reclaim. That's not the type of power we're looking to start having for ourselves. And so there's definitely this darker side of power. And I think we need to start looking at that and see how that stops us from actually reclaiming our true power. And that is the ability to act or produce an effect. It is having influence and authority. And we've started to forget that all of us have influence. Every single one of us has an influence. We all have people in our lives that we affect their lives. And we can either have a positive influence on their life, or we can be part of the negative influence in someone's life. So it's really about knowing that reclaiming your power is actually reclaiming the knowing that you actually have an impact. And we often feel like there's so much happening in the world that what is little old me going to be able to do? And I can't do anything to change anything in the world. So where I always say people need to start is then looking at ourselves. Like you firstly you have element of control over yourself, how you show up in the world and what you do, and how you act and how you behave. We do have unconscious beliefs that sometimes make us show up in certain ways, but we have control over looking at that. We have control over how we choose to heal and let go of certain things. And when it comes to this, like we also need to look at how we also sometimes use power in the wrong way, how we've often, have wanted to control other people and control other situations and manipulate and make things work out the way that we want them to work. Make even sometimes some ways that some of the manifestation stuff is taught out there is trying to manipulate something that in actually not a very good way. And we have to start compassionately looking at how we wield our own power in the world. Sometimes we're wielding our power also in a distorted and manipulative way. And that is the place to start, is looking at how do I use the power that I have? And if I feel like I have no power, why do I feel like I have no power? So often we feel like we have no power because we've been taught to believe we have none. So we've been conditioned to believe we've got no power at all, and that the world is the way it is, and we just got to get on with it. There's nothing you can do to change things. So just bear with it, move on, be tough, be resilient, and carry on. And this really is what keeps everything the way it is, because we have been told that we can't do anything, that we have no power to change things. Okay. From there, you've got to also look at the fact that a lot of us have been through childhood things that have made us feel hopeless and helpless. And I think this shows up the most in the work that I do with people, is the sense of hopelessness and helplessness that came when we were young, where we actually, other people had control of our lives at that point. Other people were looking after us, and we didn't always have the autonomy and the authority to be able to say, listen, this isn't exactly how I want to do things. This isn't my path. This isn't what I feel for myself. And we started to feel hopeless and helpless. And that also showed up a lot of people who have been through a lot of heavy childhood trauma, but not even if it's been heavy. If you've been through some form of childhood trauma, there's definitely this element of helplessness and hopelessness that shows up, that takes our power away. And individual power also comes from our sense of self-worth. So often if we're not feeling worthy, if we're not feeling enough, we will diminish our power. We will feel like we don't even deserve to have authority or influence, or that we don't even have the ability to act. So very much then personal power really comes from this sense of, I believe that I can do something different. And if I'm not able to do that right now, I will heal so that I can. Then we'll move outwards from that into the power the influence we have in our relationships and how power shows up in that. So that's often what I mentioned before, where we can sometimes use power in the wrong way in our relationships, not always consciously, but even how our relationships where some people have power over us, that can really be what distorts our view on power, is someone else, how they were, the relationship we've had with them, where we felt someone was in control of us, or if we've had been in a relationship that has been controlling, it really can affect our personal power. So when it comes to relationships, this is really where we get the opportunity to look at healing in a deep way, because people that we attract or people that we have around us often will bring up everything for us. And I'm not saying people are attracting abusive relationships. So this is really not based on that. This is when the people that you have in your life, the things they bring up the most for you are the things that we really need to be looking at for ourselves, to be able to have this truer power. And what we have control over and what we actually have power over in our families and our relationships is looking at the cycles looking at what keeps showing up in your family history. How does that keep showing up? And being able to say, I'm going to be the one to break that. It's going to sometimes be difficult to do that, because it means we have to look at the pain of the people that people have experienced. And this starts with our families that are alive, but also looking at the sort of the pain of our ancestors, that everything they've been through that was hopeless and helpless. And how that really affects us through epigenetics, like how that gets passed on from one generation to the next, where there's just so much fear. And a lot of people have had power over. There's always been this, like, capitalism and patriarchy has created hierarchy, and there has been the sense of hopelessness that I can't get out of the system. This is the system, and these systems are part of the problem, and we've got to be looking at those systems and see how they take our power away. So we're not wanting to try and create the same power as that. We want to be creating true power within, from how we show up within ourselves, how we show up within our communities, how we show up within our relationships. So that's the next part of it, community. So power with, if we look at just the whole world and everything that's happening in the world, it can feel so overwhelming that we just like, there is nothing I can do. It feels too much. I'm not even going to bother trying. But what is happening in your immediate community? If we look at our whole country, sometimes even that can be overwhelming. For someone living in a country where there's a lot going on, like it can be overwhelming. And this is obviously available to people who are in countries where there's literally so much happening that they can't even think about some of this stuff. So that's where our responsibility is. If you are able to have the space to think about these things, it's our responsibility to be taking action and trying to make changes, and trying to change what power really is, and how can we come together and make things different. Because if every single person in the world decided to say no to the systems that are in place and decided to say this is enough, things would have to change. But unfortunately, not everyone in the system can do that, because some people are just trying to survive day to day. So trying to say to someone who's just trying to survive that it's your responsibility to do something different they can't even consider beyond that, because they need to just put bread on the table. So it really is then looking at, if we're in a space where you're beyond just surviving, like, how can we make a difference? There are things that we can do that brings true power, not trying to control, not trying to manipulate, not trying to change other people, but really, how do we come together and make changes together that are going to bring those people that can't do anything because of where they're at up, and all of us together reimagining something different, a different type of power, a different type of world. So these are the biggest things that I keep feeling, is like, we want to change the whole world, and we feel sometimes this big responsibility of, how do I change the world? If it just goes too far out sometimes, that we need to come back. How do I change how I'm showing up? How do I change what's happening within my family and my relationships? And how do I change what's happening in my community? That will have the bigger ripple effects than trying to go out in the world and change everything, And some of it, there is reasons why each of us will have something we're called to that we feel more passionate about than other things. And that is where you need to be looking, instead of trying to change everything, like, what is that one thing you feel completely passionate about that you can go out and look at, saying, how can I make a difference here? And often we can't do that until we've done the work on ourselves. If you're not then doing the inner work at the same time, you will crumble at some point, because it's too much to constantly be taking on and on. That is where power gets leaked out. It really gets leaked out, because we almost burn ourselves out with it, and take on other people's things that sometimes we can't help with. It is about being honest with where you're at and how much you can do, but really being honest, because often we are feeling the helplessness and the hopelessness from our childhood that stops us from actually seeing that there is stuff that we can do, that we do have some form of power. We all have some form of influence, and we all have the ability to act. And really seeing what does that look like for you, and how does that then influence the people around you, and how does that then influence the community. And if you feel called to be like, how will it influence the world, then if that's, some people are here to do the bigger work and change the world, then that's great, but for most people, it's actually, what are the ripple effects of change I can form right here? And the more we focus on what we can do for ourselves, to free ourselves, to free our families, to free our communities, that will make a difference. So true power really is about, now, how do you feel about yourself? Working on your self-worth, working on how we show up in our relationships, how we sometimes are controlling, working on our family things. And they can be hard. It can be difficult to look at what's happening in our families, but really starting to be like, how can I break these cycles? How can I do something different? Not because what our parents did was wrong, but they often were just doing the best they could with what they had been taught. And it's also having some compassion for that. I mean, some people, obviously, it's very different if it was very traumatic, but I'm speaking about a lot of the childhood trauma that many of us have experienced, that we've just brushed under the carpet as it's just something small and it's not valid, whereas actually it's really affecting how you show up, and the power that you truly have to do something in the world and to make a difference for yourself, your family, and your community. So really looking at those layers is a really great way to be, what is my true power, and how can I reclaim that? And stop looking at the big world of the powers that be and thinking, okay, well, I'm gonna, like, it's always going to be this way and there's nothing I can do. We've got to break that and really say that there is things that we can do. We can start to reimagine, but we have to let go of the old and start focusing on what new can we bring in. So those are the feelings I had around power that I wanted to share with you. If you have any comments or anything that stood out for you, I'd love to hear. And go and reclaim your true power. That is what I would like to say. And have a safe festive season, whatever you're doing over this period. If it's just a holiday for you, just enjoy that too. And I will see you all in the new year. Thank you. Bye.